August 1, 1944. 07:42 hours. A converted farmhouse outside Avranches, France. The morning air smells of dust, diesel, and crushed hedgerow leaves. Engines idle in the fields beyond the stone walls, their low vibration humming through the ground like a restrained animal. Maps are spread across a long wooden table, their edges curled from damp nights and constant handling. Coffee sits untouched. Lieutenant General George S. Patton, Jr., stands over the map without speaking. Outside, the U.S. Third Army is waiting. You can almost feel the tension pressing against the walls, thousands of men, thousands of vehicles, all paused on the edge of something enormous. The breakout from Normandy has finally come. Operation Cobra has torn a hole in the German line. Now comes the question no one agrees on. How fast can an army move once it's free? Patton taps the map once with his riding crop. 40 miles a day, he says. The room doesn't react at first. Then comes the sound, not outrage, not shouting. Laughter. Not cruel laughter, not mocking exactly, but the kind exchanged between professionals when someone has just said something wildly unrealistic. British liaison officers glance at one another. A few American staff officers shift uncomfortably. One colonel clears his throat. 40 miles a day is not an advance. It's a fantasy. Every Allied planner in that room has been shaped by 4 years of brutal arithmetic. Roads clogged with wreckage, fuel shortages, broken bridges, German rearguards that fight just long enough to bleed you, then vanish. In North Africa, advances crawled. In Sicily, terrain strangled momentum. In Normandy, the bocage had turned every mile into a battlefield. Armies do not sprint across France. They grind. British planning doctrine, careful, deliberate, methodical, assumes pauses, always pauses. Logistics must catch up. Artillery must reposition. Headquarters must relocate. You advance, you stop, you breathe. Then you move again. Patton is proposing something else entirely. A continuous pursuit. No pauses. No breath. One British officer finally speaks, choosing his words carefully. General, our estimates suggest perhaps 10 miles per day, assuming light resistance. Patton doesn't look up. Another officer adds more bluntly, anything faster risks outrunning your supply. That one finally gets Patton's attention. He looks up slowly, eyes hard. My men don't fight on estimates, he says. They fight on gasoline and nerve. A few smiles fade. Patton begins moving his crop across the map, Avranches, then south and east, Rennes, Le Mans, Chartres. Cities marked days apart. Too few days. The British officers exchange glances again. They've seen men like this before, aggressive commanders intoxicated by optimism, usually corrected by reality within a week. One of them mutters quietly, almost kindly, he'll learn. What they don't say aloud is harsher. He'll be stopped. Because everyone knows what lies ahead. The Germans may be retreating, but retreating Germans are still dangerous. Panzer units melt into villages, set ambushes, destroy bridges. Every river becomes a delay. Every crossroads a potential slaughter. And behind Patton's army is a single fragile lifeline. Fuel trucks crawling forward from Normandy beaches still under strain. An army moves at the speed of its slowest truck. Everyone knows this. Everyone except Patton, it seems. By midday, the orders go out anyway. The U.S. Third Army is activated, officially, violently, all at once. Armored columns begin pouring through the Avranches Gap like water through a broken dam. M4 Shermans lurch forward. Half-tracks follow. Dust rises so thick it coats faces in minutes. This is not a cautious advance. This is release. Tank commanders stand half-exposed from their turrets, goggles vibrating with engine rumble. Infantrymen cling to vehicles, laughing, shouting, the kind of laughter that only comes after weeks of being pinned down. They are finally moving. Vast. By nightfall, the lead elements have already passed distances planners expected to take 2 days. Reports begin arriving at headquarters. Then more. Then faster than clerks can log them. Enemy resistance light. German units withdrawing east. Roads open. British officers read the updates with polite interest. Day 1 means nothing. Momentum always feels intoxicating at first. Day 2. Patton refuses to slow. When a staff officer suggests consolidating gains, he cuts him off. "We are not attacking," Patton snaps. "We are chasing." He orders armored spearheads to bypass resistance entirely. Leave pockets for follow-on infantry. Keep moving east, always east. The doctrine horrifies traditional planners. But it works. German rear units, trained to delay a cautious enemy, find themselves simply ignored. American tanks roar past before demolitions can be set. Bridges are captured intact by sheer speed. Speed becomes a weapon. At SHAEF headquarters, British intelligence projections still show Patton's units days behind their actual positions. Maps lag reality. And then comes the moment, quiet, almost embarrassing. A British major studies a situation board and frowns. "That can't be right," he says. The marker indicating Third Army's lead elements is far too deep. Someone checks the timestamp. It's current. Another officer laughs softly. Someone moved the pin. No one has. A courier arrives minutes later, boots caked with dust. "Message from Third Army," he says. The city, the one Patton was never supposed to reach yet, is already under American control. Not tomorrow. Not later. Now. The room goes silent. No laughter this time. Because for the first time, the unthinkable begins to form. If Patton is already there, where will he be tomorrow? The silence at SHAEF doesn't last long. It fractures. Phones begin ringing almost immediately, sharp, urgent sounds slicing through the room. Staff officers lean over maps again, this time with a different posture. No one is smiling now. No one is amused. A British brigadier studies the updated report once more, as if repetition might change the words. City secured, enemy resistance scattered, Third Army continuing east. Continuing. Not halting. Not consolidating. Not waiting for permission. Continuing. Outside headquarters, rain begins to fall, light at first, then steady. Inside, the planners realize something uncomfortable. Their timetable is already obsolete. And Patton isn't slowing down. On the roads of France, the advance has taken on a rhythm of its own. Sherman tanks rumble through villages still flying German signs. French civilians emerge cautiously from doorways, unsure whether this is another passing column or liberation itself. Children run alongside half-tracks until mothers pull them back. The Americans don't stop. They wave. They shout. They keep moving. You can almost feel the momentum, not just mechanical but emotional. Men sense it instinctively. This is different from Normandy, different from hedgerow hell. Here, the enemy is running. And Patton is determined not to let him breathe. At the front, tank commanders begin operating on instinct more than orders. When resistance appears, a machine gun nest, a lone anti-tank gun, they mark it, radio it, and bypass it. Infantry will deal with it later. The goal is no longer territory. The goal is collapse. German units retreat eastward in fragments. Some move by night, others simply dissolve. Trucks break down from overuse. Horses collapse in the heat. Maps are abandoned in ditches. The Wehrmacht is no longer maneuvering. It's reacting. and reaction is slower than initiative. At 3rd Army headquarters, Patton stalks the floor like a man listening to distant thunder. Reports pour in hourly. Distances covered today exceed expectations, again. Fuel consumption is astronomical. One logistics officer finally voices what everyone is thinking. General, at this rate, we'll outrun our supply by the end of the week. Patton stops packing, turns slowly, then smiles. Then we'd better steal some gasoline. It isn't a joke. Captured German fuel dumps are seized and immediately redistributed. Jerrycans marked with black crosses are stacked beside American vehicles within hours. Mechanics work through the night swapping fittings, forcing foreign fuel into American engines. The Army becomes self-feeding. Imperfect, dangerous, but vast. Behind the front lines, the Red Ball Express is already forming. Thousands of trucks pushed to their limits, drivers running on coffee and exhaustion, headlights off at night, convoys stretching for miles. The trucks are not keeping up. They are barely holding on. Yet somehow the advance continues. Back at SHAEF, British planners attempt to redraw the future. New estimates are produced, conservative ones, safer ones. They give Patton another 3 days to reach the next objective. 2 days later, he's already there. A senior intelligence officer quietly removes the outdated projection map from the wall. No one says anything. The laughter from avalanches feels like it happened in another war. German command is beginning to understand the danger. Field reports describe American armor appearing without warning, striking rear areas once considered safe. Communications collapse. Orders arrive too late to matter. One German staff officer writes later, "We were not fighting an army advancing. We were being hunted." Patton's columns don't announce themselves with artillery barrages or formal assaults. They arrive suddenly, engines roaring, dust clouds rising. Then they're gone again, leaving confusion behind. Speed becomes terror. Then comes the moment that forces the reckoning. A British liaison officer, newly arrived from SHAEF, reaches 3rd Army headquarters. He expects triumphal chaos. Instead, he finds Patton studying the map again, already looking past the last victory. "General," the officer begins carefully, "there is concern you're moving too far ahead of the main Allied front." Patton doesn't look up. "That's the point," he says. The officer hesitates. "Sir, the Germans may counterattack your flanks." Patton finally meets his eyes. "Let them," he replies. "They'll only find air." The implication lands hard. The enemy cannot strike what it cannot catch. That night, a new report reaches SHAEF. Another city taken. Again earlier than predicted. This time, the reaction is different. No disbelief. No laughter. Only unease. Because Patton isn't just outperforming the plan. He is rewriting it in real time. And now Allied command must confront an uncomfortable truth. If they try to slow him down, they might lose the greatest advantage they've had since Normandy. But if they let him keep going, no one knows how far he might go before something finally snaps. The map is breaking, and Patton is still accelerating. The first warning does not come from German guns. It comes from silence. At SHAEF headquarters, early morning briefings begin arriving incomplete. Unit positions that should have been reported overnight are missing, not because they've been destroyed, but because they've moved too far, too fast for the reporting chain to keep pace. Patton's lead elements are now operating beyond the assumptions baked into Allied command structure. And that scares people. A British major finally says it aloud. He's outpacing his own shadow. No one argues. Because now the question is no longer can he do it. It's should he. On the ground, the pace has become merciless. Tank crews sleep sitting up, helmets still on. Engines are shut down only when absolutely necessary. Drivers memorize road curves by instinct. Infantrymen ride whenever they can, walk when they must, and never complain because stopping feels worse than exhaustion. You can almost feel it in their bones. If we stop, the spell breaks. Patton understands this better than anyone. He issues orders that feel reckless on paper but electric in practice. Advance at first light. Advance at dusk. Advance at night if the road is clear. Officers are authorized to make decisions without waiting for confirmation. Initiative is rewarded. Hesitation is not. The Army becomes a living thing, surging forward on willpower as much as fuel. German resistance stiffens briefly near key crossroads. Panzer remnants attempt to form blocking positions. A handful of 88 guns open fire, knocking out the lead Sherman of one column. Normally, this would halt an advance. Instead, Patton's tanks swing wide and go around. The destroyed vehicle burns alone in the road, black smoke, rising like a marker of where the war used to be fought. The rest of the column never stops. This is new. And the Germans feel it immediately. Their doctrine relies on forcing the enemy to deploy, to stop, to form lines, to slow down. Patton refuses to play that game. He is not interested in winning battles. He is interested in winning time. At SHAEF, concern sharpens into something closer to fear. British planners had expected the American advance to align with Montgomery's methodical push in the north. Instead, Patton is pulling the front eastward unevenly, stretching the Allied line like fabric under strain. A senior British general studies the situation map late one night. If he breaks through completely, he murmurs, he'll be alone. The word hangs in the air. Alone. That's how disasters begin. Everyone in the room knows the historical ghosts, overextended advances, exposed flanks, counterattacks that erase entire formations. They imagine German armor surging out of the fog, severing Patton's supply lines, trapping the Third Army deep in France. It's not impossible. It's plausible. And that makes it terrifying. Patton, meanwhile, seems almost cheerful. When warned again about overextension, he replies with a grin. I don't worry about what the enemy might do, he says. I worry about what he won't have time to do. He orders reconnaissance units farther ahead, not to probe cautiously, but to look for opportunity. Where are the gaps? Where is the enemy absent? Every empty road becomes an invitation. Then comes the moment that changes the tone completely. A full intelligence summary arrives at SHAEF, compiled from prisoner interrogations and intercepted communications. The Germans are not planning a counterattack. They can't. They're too disorganized, too exhausted, too confused by the speed. One captured officer admits under questioning, "We believed the Americans would stop. They never did." Another says something more chilling. "We could not tell where your front line was. It moved faster than our reports." That sentence spreads quietly through headquarters. Because if the enemy cannot locate the front, then Patton's greatest risk might also be his greatest protection. The British officers who once laughed at the timetable now study it in silence. Some begin recalculating not how to restrain the advance, but how to support it. Fuel allocations are reconsidered. Air cover is extended forward. Supply officers begin arguing for Patton instead of against him. Not openly. Not yet. But the shift has begun. Disbelief has turned into something sharper. Respect, mixed with anxiety. Because now they understand what Patton has done. He has forced Allied command into a decision they never wanted to make. Either slow the fastest advance of the war, or gamble everything on it. And the gamble is growing larger by the hour. That night, Patton receives word that the next objective, once thought unreachable this soon, lies virtually undefended. The road is open. Again. He doesn't hesitate. Tell the lead units to push through. The engines start almost immediately. And somewhere far behind, in rooms filled with maps and doubts, the realization finally settles in. They are no longer planning Patton's war. They are chasing it. August 5, 1944. 06:15 hours. The roads between Avranches and Le Mans. A pale sun struggles through low clouds, casting long, gray shadows over hedgerows riddled with shell craters. Dust and exhaust mix in the chill morning air. You can hear engines long before you see them. The deep growl of M4 Shermans, the clatter of half-tracks, the whine of jeeps weaving between broken villages. The columns stretch for miles, snaking through the French countryside like a living, metallic river. Infantrymen ride on the flanks, scanning fields and rooftops for movement. Tank commanders lean from their turrets, binoculars trained on distant smoke plumes where retreating Germans attempt to stand. But each time the enemy opens fire, the Americans are already gone. Patton's armor sweeps around, bypassing resistance, leaving chaos behind. Explosions mark where a panzer once blocked a road. Burned-out trucks and abandoned weapons testify to a force always one step behind, never catching up. Somewhere in that river of men and steel you sense the pattern. This is no ordinary army. This is a ghost. The Germans cannot pin it down. They cannot anticipate its path. They are always chasing shadows. At SHAEF, the telephones ring incessantly. Clerks scurry with new reports. Maps are redrawn daily, then discarded as quickly as they are updated. British officers, once amused by Patton's audacity, now exchange worried glances. Disbelief has hardened into fear. One general mutters into the phone, "We cannot predict his next move." Another adds, "Nor can we support him fast enough." The truth is inescapable. Patton has turned momentum into a weapon. Each day, he reshapes the battlefield. Cities once thought days away are under his control. Logistics can barely keep up. Orders from headquarters often arrive too late to matter. And yet, the army surges forward, unstoppable. Even the soldiers themselves feel it. You can almost hear their thoughts in the engine's hum, the creak of treads over mud, the whispers in jeeps at night. We are moving faster than anyone ever thought possible. We are part of something bigger than maps or plans. We are invincible today. But with this exhilaration comes tension. Patton knows every mile gained stretches his supply lines thinner. A single miscalculation, a single German ambush, could trap entire divisions far ahead of support. He feels it in the vibration under his boots, in the way the tanks shudder when crossing old bridges, in the endless dust that coats everything like a warning. And still, he does not hesitate. "Push forward," he tells his staff. "Every mile we gain is one they cannot recover." Hours later, the first elements reach a city that, according to the British timetable, should not see Americans for 3 more days. Soldiers spill into streets. Civilians cheer cautiously, unsure if the guns will return. German defenders retreat or surrender without resistance, unable to comprehend how their lines were already bypassed. Back at SHAEF, a senior British officer leans over the situation board. For the first time, he does not even try to hide it. "We underestimated him," he says softly. And the room falls silent, because the laughter from just days before has vanished completely. They were chasing not a general, not even an army, but a force that seemed to exist outside the normal rules of war. One question hangs in the air, unspoken but palpable. How far can it go before it finally stops? August 6, 1944. 04:50 hours. The outskirts of Le Mans. The city slumbers under a heavy fog. Narrow cobbled streets wind between stone houses with shuttered windows, silent except for the occasional crow or the scrape of a shutter in the wind. But the calm is deceptive. Somewhere outside the fog, engines rumble like distant thunder, growing louder with each passing minute. Patton's lead elements have arrived earlier than even he expected. M4 Shermans, coated in dust and mud, slide around the city's outskirts, turret-mounted .50 caliber machine guns swiveling lazily, waiting, always waiting for signs of resistance. Infantry follows in half-tracks and on foot, rifles ready, eyes scanning. Every man knows the city must be secured before dawn. Every man knows speed is now survival. The Germans had prepared for a counterattack. A handful of Panzer IVs and a few armored reconnaissance vehicles lay hidden along main roads, waiting for the Third Army to stumble into them. They fire. The Shermans respond not by halting, but by circling, flanking, and bypassing. A tank explodes in a fireball, its crew scrambling to safety, while the rest of the column presses forward. Inside Patton's mobile headquarters, he studies the map, eyes moving quickly over roads, canals, and villages. Radio reports crackle intermittently, feeding him real-time updates from the front. Enemy positions minimal, civilians unharmed, a lieutenant reports. Good, Patton replies. Then let's take the center before they wake up. It is this relentless pace, this refusal to pause, that defines him. While other generals might have slowed to consolidate, he accelerates, turning the expected into the extraordinary. At SHAEF, the realization hits like a sledgehammer. Reports confirm. Patton's columns have reached Le Mans not in 3 days, as planners predicted, but in barely 2. Maps, schedules, projections, all obsolete. The British officers who once laughed at his timetable now sit silently, staring at a blinking red marker on the situation board. One officer murmurs, almost to himself. They underestimated not just his speed, but his audacity. It is true. The Third Army's advance is no longer a matter of logistics or careful calculation. It is a psychological weapon. German defenders are demoralized before the first shot. Civilians cheer cautiously as they witness American armor appear seemingly from nowhere. An Allied command, both American and British, is forced to confront a terrifying new reality. The rules of war on this front are being rewritten on the fly. The streets of Le Mans are quiet, almost eerily so, as the Americans enter. Soldiers move with precision, aware that hesitation could cost them dearly. Tanks roll past the city center, crushing rubble, leaving tire tracks across centuries-old cobblestones. Patton walks among them, boots caked in mud, helmet tilted slightly forward, riding crop in hand. Every glance at his men, every nod, seems to communicate the same unspoken command: keep moving, do not stop. Behind the Third Army, supply units struggle to keep pace. Fuel convoys snake through narrow roads, mechanics working through the night to repair broken trucks and tanks. Yet, despite the strain, the Army presses on, driven by a combination of adrenaline, discipline, and sheer audacity. By midday, the city is firmly under American control. Flags rise above municipal buildings. The few remaining German soldiers are captured or flee. Reports flood in: Le Mans secured. The advance continues east, and Patton's men are already approaching the next objective. At SHAEF, the atmosphere has shifted completely. What was once mockery has become awe. What was skepticism has become calculation. Commanders now plan around Patton, not the other way around. One British officer leans back in his chair, staring at the map. He whispers quietly, almost in disbelief. He doesn't just move armies, he moves destiny. And for the first time, everyone realizes the Third Army may not stop until it decides to. But as the sun sets behind Le Mans, a question lingers like smoke in the streets. How much farther can an army run before the enemy finally catches up? August 7, 1944. 10:30 hours. SHAEF Headquarters, Versailles. The room is thick with cigarette smoke and tension. Maps lie across every available surface, pinned with colored markers tracking divisions, fuel convoys, and projected advances. Phones ring non-stop. Couriers rush in with new reports. Officers pace in tight circles, murmuring to one another in hurried French-accented English. For weeks the British had watched, half amused, half skeptical, as Patton's timetable defied logic. Now the laughter is gone, replaced with calculation, unease, and quietly admiration. A senior British intelligence officer addresses the room. "Gentlemen, the Third Army is moving faster than any estimates projected. Entire German units are dissolving before they can organize. If this pace continues, we may have to reconsider the entire operational plan." Heads swivel. Some men shake their heads, unable to believe it. Others bite lips, knowing he speaks the truth. The realization is painful. The fastest advance of the war is not happening under British planning doctrine. It is happening because of Patton, alone, audacious, and relentless. Meanwhile, in the field, Patton is already thinking ahead. Reports indicate scattered pockets of German resistance near Chartres, further east. Bridges are intact. Roads are clear. The American Army, still fueled by captured supplies and the Red Ball Express convoys, is poised to push again before the enemy can react. Patton's staff officers, some visibly exhausted, debate the risks. "Sir, we are outrunning our supply," one warns. Patton grins. "Then we will steal more," he replies, voice calm. "The Germans won't be using it anyway." He studies his map with precision. Every road, canal, and village is a puzzle piece. Every mile gained is one step closer to cutting off German escape routes and forcing their units to collapse in panic. News of Patton's audacity spreads fast. Radio intercepts from German units describe armored columns appearing from nowhere, bypassing strongpoints, and striking rear positions with unrelenting speed. Officers in Berlin begin to whisper that the Third Army is not fighting by conventional rules. It seems almost supernatural. Back at SHAEF, British planners begin to respond, not by slowing Patton down but by bending logistics to his will. Fuel trucks are rerouted. Air support is extended farther forward. Reinforcements are reassigned. Allies adapt to an army that refuses to wait. In essence, Patton has forced Allied command to chase him, literally and figuratively. By nightfall, the American columns have moved another 20 miles. Civilians along the roads wave cautiously as Sherman tanks thunder past. Soldiers shout greetings or curses depending on their mood, but none stop. The momentum is intoxicating. Patton walks among his men, observing every unit, every tank, every truck. He smiles rarely, but the grin that appears is sharp, precise, a predator measuring the chase. "Keep going," he tells them. "Every mile they can't contest is a mile we own." And somewhere far behind, in the quiet rooms of British officers who once mocked him, the thought settles in fully. Patton isn't just advancing an army. He's rewriting the expectations of war itself. The maps, the timetables, the estimates, all obsolete. And as the Third Army continues its relentless eastward surge, the shadow of the man who laughed at convention stretches far beyond Normandy. The question now isn't if the Germans can stop him. It's when, August 8, 1944, 03:20 hours, somewhere between Le Mans and Chartres. The world is quiet, save for the low hum of engines and the occasional creak of tired tracks over cracked asphalt. Fog clings to the fields like a shroud. Soldiers huddle in half-tracks, rifles across laps, eyes half-closed but alert. Every sound, a crow, a distant crash, a single gunshot, pulls them upright. They've learned that at this pace there is no room for surprise. Not for them. Not for anyone. Patton rides in a jeep at the front, eyes sharp beneath his helmet. The roads ahead are open. Ahead of him, Sherman tanks glide past, a chain of steel and determination, unstoppable. Behind him, supply trucks strain under the weight of fuel and ammunition, pushed to the edge of possibility. Mechanics swap engines and fittings as quickly as men can pass instructions. Every hour is a race, every mile a gamble, every city a new stage in an unfolding spectacle. This is the Third Army's new reality. Speed as a weapon, audacity as strategy, improvisation as doctrine. Far behind, Allied planners try to keep pace. Maps are redrawn for the fifth time today. Timetables, once sacred, are shredded. British officers who mocked Patton just days ago now speak in hushed tones. "He's moving faster than we can supply him," one admits. Another adds, "He's already beyond our last projection." At SHAEF, commanders debate whether to slow the advance to consolidate gains, but the decision is made for them. Patton cannot and will not be slowed. His army has developed its own momentum, a force separate from logistics or doctrine. The Germans notice it too. Intercepted radio chatter describes American armor appearing in unexpected places, bypassing strongpoints, and leaving confusion in its wake. A captured officer later recounts, "They moved like ghosts. We could not find the front line. They were everywhere at once and nowhere at all." Speed has become terror, not for the Americans, for the enemy. Patton's mind, always ahead, calculates the next move while observing the dust clouds of the approaching columns. "Send reconnaissance north and south," he orders. "I want to know every road open, every village without defenders, every river ford we can cross." Orders move faster than clerks can record them. Radio operators shout over static, messengers dash across campgrounds, and officers sprint along the column passing commands. It is chaotic. It is brilliant. It is exactly what Patton wants. By midday, another city, Chartres, falls into American hands. German defenders are scattered or captured. Civilians emerge cautiously, blinking against the dust, uncertain whether to cheer or flee. At SHAEF, the reaction is the same as Le Mans: silence, awe, unease. Disbelief has transformed fully into fear, not of Patton himself, but of what his speed has made inevitable: the unraveling of German control in France. And yet, even as victory accumulates, tension lingers. Every mile forward stretches the supply lines thinner. Every city captured opens new questions. Can the columns continue without pause? Will fuel and ammunition arrive in time? Can men and vehicles endure this relentless pace? Patton knows all this. He thrives on it. When a young lieutenant voices concern about exhaustion among the tank crews, Patton only smiles. "Fatigue is temporary, speed is permanent," he says. It is a mantra the Third Army will live by, and one that will echo in history. As night falls, the headlights of Sherman Tank slice through the darkness, marking the path of a relentless force. Somewhere in France, a German officer mutters in despair, "They are everywhere, and they are not stopping." The Third Army has become more than a military unit. It is a storm, a shadow, an unstoppable pulse racing through the heart of Europe. And in the quiet rooms of Allied command, the final, unspoken question rises again. How far can Patton go before the enemy finally catches up, if they ever can? August 9th, 1944. 05:45 hours. The open plains east of Chartres. A thin mist drifts over shattered fields and broken hedgerows. Sherman tanks roll steadily, engines growling through the morning fog, treads leaving long scars across the mud. Infantry follows, rifles ready, eyes scanning the horizon. Dust and smoke cling to men's uniforms and faces. They are exhausted but exhilarated. They are moving faster than the war ever expected. Patton rides in the lead jeep, binoculars pressed to his eyes. He watches the horizon, calculating the next advance, the next maneuver, the next opportunity. Maps sprawled across the dashboard show the route east, cities, rivers, bridges, all marked with mileages that once seemed impossible. Behind him, fuel trucks strain to keep pace. Mechanics work in the open, swapping engines, patching tires, rigging pipelines from captured German supplies. The columns are a living organism, fueled by ingenuity, adrenaline, and sheer willpower. The Germans, meanwhile, are in chaos. Intelligence reports describe columns appearing in unexpected areas, bypassing fortifications and striking positions the enemy thought safe. Rearguard units attempt desperate stands, only to find the Americans already gone. Communications collapse, orders arrive too late. Confusion spreads like wildfire through German command. A captured officer later recalls, "We could not tell where the front line was. It moved faster than our reports, faster than we could comprehend. It was as if the Americans were everywhere at once." Speed has become a weapon, audacity its shield, and the Third Army wields both with surgical precision. Back at SHAEF, the room is tense. British and American officers stare at maps, markers blinking red and blue, columns stretching farther than projected. Discussions turn into urgent debates. "He's overextended," one British officer says quietly. "Perhaps," another replies, "but he's untouchable right now. There is no German force capable of stopping him in this sector." The realization is uncomfortable. Patton's advance is rewriting the operational map. Every plan, every timetable, every calculation becomes meaningless the moment the Third Army moves. Allied command has no choice but to adjust, to follow, to support, and to pray that the supply lines hold. In the field, momentum is palpable. Men move almost instinctively, anticipating commands, improvising on the fly. Tanks surge over broken roads, infantry keeps pace on foot or in half-tracks, engineers rebuild bridges while gunfire echoes in the distance. It is a ballet of war at impossible speed. Patton stops briefly atop a rise, surveying the advancing columns. Dust hangs like a haze in the sunlight, engines growl, and the horizon seems endless. He taps his riding crop against the dashboard, and for a moment the world feels suspended, poised between chaos and inevitability. Then he orders the next push. "Keep moving," he says. "Every mile we gain is one they cannot recover." And the Third Army moves, faster, harder, relentlessly. By evening, another city falls into American hands. German defenders are either captured or routed. Civilians cautiously step into streets lined with tanks and jeeps, their eyes wide with awe and fear. The news reaches SHAEF late at night, and the reaction is unanimous. Disbelief has fully transformed into respect, urgency, and a growing sense of dread, because the speed of Patton's advance is a force none can truly predict or contain. The Third Army has become a storm sweeping across northern France, a tide that no map, no schedule, and no doctrine can restrain. And far behind, British officers whisper the same question they've been asking for days. How far will he go before the enemy can stop him, if they ever can? August 10th, 1944. 04:10 hours. The outskirts of Orleans. Mist hangs over the Loire Valley like a thin curtain, but nothing can conceal the thunder of approaching armor. Sherman tanks roar over broken roads, half-tracks follow, infantry clings to vehicles, every soldier alert, every gun ready. Dust rises in clouds so thick it coats faces, rifles, and helmets alike. Behind these machines, men move with the rhythm of necessity, mechanics repairing engines on the fly, medics tending to wounded without pause, signal officers relaying orders faster than clerks can record them. Every step is synchronized, every mile a testament to sheer audacity. Patton rides at the front, riding crop in hand, scanning the terrain. He watches as columns pivot around resistance, bypassing small pockets of German forces, leaving chaos and disarray behind. Where the Germans attempt to form a line, the Third Army simply sweeps past. One officer later described it as watching a ghost army pass through solid earth. German forces are fracturing. rearguard units, intended to slow the Allied advance, are annihilated before they can regroup. Bridges meant to impede the Americans are captured intact. Supply dumps vanish into the hands of soldiers who move faster than the enemy can react. Communications break down. German officers send desperate messages that never reach headquarters in time. Field reports noted again and again. They do not stop, they do not wait, they are everywhere. One captured panzer commander confesses, under interrogation, "We were trained to slow them, to bleed them, to make them pause. Instead, we watched them vanish around us like shadows." The collapse of the German rearguard is total. Panic spreads among the defenders, and morale crumbles. Units that had fought tenaciously in Normandy now dissolve before a force they cannot anticipate. At SHAEF, British officers stare at the maps, red markers denoting captured cities stretching farther east than anyone expected. The laughter from just a week ago has entirely disappeared. What had been a wild timetable is now undeniable reality. Patton's pace has forced a full recalculation of Allied operations. Fuel, supplies, reinforcements, everything must move at his tempo or risk failure. One British general leans back in his chair and mutters, almost to himself, "He doesn't just outrun the enemy, he outruns us as well." The statement hangs in the room like a warning. In the field, Patton continues forward. Every captured city becomes a stepping stone. Every broken road is a challenge to be overcome. Every German rearguard destroyed or bypassed is proof that momentum, decisiveness, and audacity can triumph over doctrine and expectation. By nightfall, Orleans is in American hands. Civilians emerge cautiously, cheering, crying, or simply watching the unstoppable tide roll past. German units are scattered or surrendered. Patton receives reports of his next objectives, cities and crossroads that the British timetable had expected to reach days later. He barely pauses, already planning the next advance. The Third Army has become more than a military force. It is a storm, a machine of motion, a psychological weapon against an enemy who can no longer even imagine the front line. And in the quiet rooms of Allied command, officers whisper in awe and disbelief. Patton has not just met his timetable, he has shattered it. The question now is no longer if he will succeed. It is how far he can go before the war itself tries to catch up. August 11, 1944. 09:00 hours. SHAEF Headquarters, Versailles. The room is heavy with smoke, fatigue, and tension. Red pins on the situation board mark cities already captured by Patton's Third Army. Le Mans, Chartres, Orleans is stretching far beyond any previous projection. The British officers who once chuckled at his audacity now sit in silence, eyes fixed on the board, whispering among themselves with disbelief. One senior officer clears his throat, voice low but carrying weight. "Gentlemen, the Third Army has outpaced our projections by nearly 70 miles. They are moving faster than any supply line can reasonably follow, and yet they have not slowed." A hush falls over the room. The magnitude sinks in. This is not recklessness. This is mastery. Speed, audacity, and relentless initiative have rewritten the rules of war on this front. Far ahead, Patton rides at the lead. Dust swirls in the summer air, engines rumble beneath him, and the American columns stretch like a river of steel across the French countryside. Every mile gained weakens the enemy's ability to react. Every city taken fuels momentum. Soldiers, mechanics, and medics work in harmony, operating like cogs in a machine designed for one purpose: relentless forward motion. He stops briefly atop a hill overlooking a captured village. Smoke rises from abandoned German vehicles, the scent of burned fuel sharp in the air. Civilians cautiously step from hiding, some cheering, others staring in awe at the unstoppable force sweeping through their homeland. Patton studies the map once more, eyes tracing the next objective. A slight grin touches his lips. "Keep moving," he orders. The enemy cannot stop what they cannot catch. Back at SHAEF, British officers begin to grasp the full implications. What had started as laughter at an audacious timetable has transformed into a profound understanding. Patton is not merely ahead of schedule. He is ahead of expectation, doctrine, and conventional strategy. One officer whispers, almost to himself, as he studies the reports. He doesn't just move armies, he moves destiny. The room remains silent. There is awe, yes, but also fear. Fear of the speed, fear of the audacity, fear of what happens when an army outpaces not just its enemy, but the assumptions of those who command it. In the field, the Third Army continues. Sherman tanks roar, infantry marches or rides, engineers repair bridges, and supply trucks push relentlessly forward. Every mile gained is another shock to the Germans, another victory, another step closer to crushing the remnants of their defense in northern France. German commanders scramble to respond but cannot. Messages arrive too late, reinforcements cannot reach threatened sectors in time, and morale fractures. What was once considered a calculated retreat becomes chaos. Panzer units dissolve, rearguards surrender, and towns fall before defenders can mount a coherent defense. Patton's army moves like a storm, precise, overwhelming, unstoppable. By dusk, the Third Army has captured yet another key crossroads. Reports arrive that German units are withdrawing farther east, unable to regroup. Every mile Patton gains stretches Allied lines, logistics, and the enemy's nerves to the limit. At SHAEF, the room that once mocked now strategizes around him. Supply chains are rerouted, air support extended, reinforcements dispatched not to catch him, but to sustain his unstoppable momentum. The laughter is gone. The disbelief has transformed into admiration, urgency, and a dawning realization. The rules of war have changed. Patton has not only shattered expectations. He has created a new template for speed, audacity, and initiative in modern warfare. And as night falls across the French countryside, one truth becomes undeniable. The Third Army will not wait, the enemy cannot catch it, and the world has never seen anything like it.